Good morning, Oak Life community in person. What's up with the hand wave, Darren? I see you. Online, I don't see you, but I appreciate you because I see you in the comments. So thank you for rocking with us this morning. If you are new here, welcome. We are Oak Life Church, a group of everyday individuals doing our best to live, love, fight, and follow as Jesus did and does. And I'm excited to join in with this celebration today. Let us pray. Holy Spirit, we thank you for today. We thank you for this people. We thank you for this community. We thank you for the light that you shine upon us and, more importantly, within us. Let your love guide it all. In Jesus' name, amen. If you're comfortable and willing in body or spirit, would you stand as we sing these songs?
I was an orphan lost at the fall, running away when I'd hear you call. Father, you worked your will. I had no righteousness of my own. I had no right to draw near your throne. Father, you loved me still. And in love before you laid the world's foundation, you have chosen to adopt me as your own. You have raised me up so high above my station. I'm a child of God by grace and grace alone. Great and terrible cost, but Jesus, your fate was sad. I worked my fingers down to the bone. Nothing I did could ever atone, but Jesus, you paid my debt. By your blood I have redemption and salvation. Lord, you died that I might reap what you have sown, and you rose that I might be a new creation. I am born again by grace and grace alone. I was in darkness all of my life. I never knew the day from the night. The Spirit, you made me see. I swear I knew the way on my own. Head full of rocks, a heart made of stone. Spirit, you moved in me. At your touch, my sleeping spirit was awakened. On my darkened heart, the light of Christ has shone. Called into a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Heaven's citizen by grace and grace alone. So I'll stand in faith by grace and grace alone. I will run the race by grace and grace alone. I will slay my sin by grace and grace alone. I will reach the end by grace and grace alone.
Clap it up for Jesus. Amen. Amen.
There's a light in my life shining over me. There's a light in my life shining over me. Let your blessings from above fill me with that precious love. There's a light in my life shining over me. Let's sing that again. There's a light in my life shining over me. There's a light in my life shining over me. Yeah. Let your blessings from above fill me with that precious love. There's a light in my shining over me. Lord, sometimes I sit and wonder why strange things happen to me. Then again I feel my friends are gone. But if I put my trust in Jesus, my burdens will lie down. Don't you see there's a light in my life shining over me? There's a light in my life shining over me. There's a light in my life shining over me. Yeah, let your blessings from above fill me with that precious love. There's a light in my life shining over me. Lord, walk with me. Lord, talk with me. Please stay close by my side. Be my shelter, be my comfort, be my guide. I was blind, but now I see. Jesus, he came and he rescued me. There's a light in my life shining over me. There's a light in my life shining over me. There's a light in my life shining over me. Yeah, let your blessings from above fill me with that precious love. There's a light in my life shining. There's a light in my life. Oh yeah, there's a light in my life shining over me. Hey, and all God's people said, amen. Feel free to be seated.
We are a community of people doing our best to follow the way of Jesus.
At Oak Life, we celebrate the many ways faith, love, and hope can be expressed.
We're always seeking to create a world that more deeply reflects God's shalom.
And we long to see justice and healing in our world.
We're an affirming church. We welcome our LGBTQ plus family and seek to create a community free of exclusion and discrimination.
We're guided by values that encourage us to keep growing and learning.
Deep community,
Peace and justice, creativity.
Compassion, creation care,
Intellectual engagement,
and diversity.
Like the oak tree, as our roots grow deep and our branches grow wide, we hope to be a community that embraces growth, fights for justice, and seeks reconciliation.
for ourselves, our neighbors, and our world.
Will you join us in creating a church that tells an expansive story of God's love? Welcome to Oak Life.
Hi. Morning, all. My name is Rich, and I've got your announcements. Happy 10 years in 1 week. Before I get into the announcements, pro tip, check a chair before, make sure it's not busted before you sit in it. Just good advice for future times. Okay, life groups are now open. Good way to get engaged in different ways. We've got a number of them up here, the LGBTQ+, the families one, hiking one. You see the full list. Highly recommend the board games one. We had a blast last night. Some of us got together and played some board games. My team won in terms of code names, so that is the most important thing to take away from the slide. Remember nothing else, that's what we got. So feel free to sign up there, get engaged. We have a community member in need, so that QR code will take you to a link to be able to donate, including things like a twin mattress. Also pastor's emails up there in terms of if you want to engage. Reimagining communion. So this is an opportunity for folks together and talk about what this means while breaking bread together. There's ways to RSVP via the newsletter. Mariana is hosting this, so if you have questions, please ask Mariana. Generally, if there's like nothing you take away from this time, there's a bunch of backup information in the newsletter, so just make sure you check out the newsletter. But this one's about reimagining communion. Ballot party is this Saturday. So if you're curious about learning about the measures or a chance to ask some questions or a chance to check in, it's going to be at First Presbyterian of Oakland. And you see the address on this slide. That's happening this Saturday. So that's the ballot party. And then afterwards, if you want to go to the Time in the Park, we got a family kids park hang, and the park has been named. The park has been revealed. It is the San Pablo Park in Berkeley is where this is going to be. All right, so that is starting at 3:30, goes to 5:30. Art night, the first Friday, 6:30. If you want a chance to share your art, again, sign up in the newsletter. All right, Rooted at Oak Life. So this is an opportunity if you want to feel more engaged and committed to this space and this community. There are some resources on the website, and I think there's also more information on the newsletter. This is a topic of conversation that's been coming up recently, so please consider this and think about what it means to have this place be your home, be your church home. And then just generally, like we had a good financial report last week. Please continue to consider to give to this church if you see this as your home, as your church home. All right, so y'all, what do you have in terms of announcements? Is there something coming up that you could do briefly? I see some dodging eyes.
All right, good morning, Oak Life. See, I was here in the back, and you thought you're missing me, huh? Okay, so I just want you to know, guess what today is? Do you know what today is? It's actually Pastor Appreciation Day. Yeah. So can you give our pastors, like, some love? Yeah. Thank you so much. Do you see how they just all exited stage left? They were just like, we gotta go. But we do want to really thank them for all of their work that they do, for helping to start the community at Oak Life, for helping to bring us all here together, for allowing us to just have a space that's welcoming and affirming and open for everyone to come and to learn a little bit more about Jesus, to fight, follow, and love like Jesus did, and to learn to continue to be better people, better humans, and better community members. So thank you to Chris and Greg. Thank you for everything that you guys do. And a special thank you for also putting out the calendar, because that was my one thing I wanted as the board chair, and you did it, and I feel very pleased. So I just love you for that. So if you haven't seen the calendar of events that we have, it's on the website. So click on the oaklife.com website and help to follow along with all the things that we're doing here at the church.
Thank you, Leslie. All right, any others? If not, I think we're going to move to chair chats. Is that right? All right, so chair chats, a moment to turn to folks near you and answer these questions. All right, go.
We are your neighbors from every corner of the Bay Area.
From Oakland.
From Santa Clara County.
From San Francisco,
The North Bay.
From Fremont.
This is your 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning.
This is how AI.
All right, go ahead and start wrapping up the chair chats. Finding your way back to a safe chair. As people are getting situated in the room, just a special welcome to those watching online. We've got a good crew today. Michael, good morning, Lori, Lilia, Doro, Larry, Blue Girl 289. Thank y'all for joining us online, and keep the chats going, and glad that we can stay connected in this way. All right, superpower, just so you can shout out what you would have. I want to hear if there's any originals. Teleportation. How many people said teleportation? Okay, other superpowers? Healing. Okay, you're better than us. We get it. We get it. Any other superpowers? Flight. How many people said flying? That's always mine. What other superpowers do people say? Photographic memory. That's a good one. I don't know if I heard that. That has nothing to do with today's conversation, so just thanks for engaging. Maybe it does in some kind of mystical way, but if you are new here, welcome. If you are returning, welcome. If you're visiting from out of town, special welcome to you. My name's Chris, and Greg and I are co-pastors here, and we are day one, as Rich said, into our 10th year as a community. Last year we celebrated 10 years. And there's lots of fun connection and activity happening around. So this is kind of the fall, early fall is kind of a time frame to get connected. Things just kind of in our rhythms. Life groups start, there tends to be a lot of activity. This is a great time to find some space to get connected if you're looking for that. Today we're starting a new series called Reclaim, Recovering the Sacred Invitation of Faith. And the word reclaim was chosen by our speaking team. It felt like the most appropriate word. It wasn't reimagine. We've done that, actually. It wasn't rethink. It was reclaim. We felt like that was like a strong word for this emphasis we wanted to go with. Reclaim means to retrieve or recover something previously lost, given, or paid. So we're going back to things and kind of recapturing them. In the process of people going through various highs and lows of faith communities, you might have observed there tends to be seasons where people need to be angry. Something bad happens or something that's unjust, and there's like a rejection. Some people call that like deconstruction or decolonizing, or there's lots of words. And I think this word reclaim tends to be on kind of the next few steps because it emphasizes, actually, I've done some healing, and I want to go back to those things and see what is still good there. You see communities reclaiming their identity when they've been marginalized. Even the early Christians, you may have heard the story that originally the word Christian in the first century world was a derogatory term, and the Christian community reclaimed it as an identifying marker for themselves, kind of a subversive way to identify themselves. And you can probably think of many communities who have had words used for them that have then been reclaimed as a subversion of power against those who are trying to marginalize them. And so reclaiming as a practice can be a really important part of your spiritual journey. And we chose this theme as our theme for the entire year. We haven't done that before. Usually we have like a series with a theme like 8, 10, 12 weeks, then we go on to something else. But this idea of being a community that is reclaiming the invitation of faith, the good of faith, the sacredness of faith, our practices, our traditions, even these ideas, there's a lot of good there. And we need it, our world still needs it. And maybe we can do that together. And so some of the topics that we're going to be talking about over the coming weeks are things like money, power in church, evangelism, sin, spiritual warfare. If you grew up in the church, there's a whole list of different topics that maybe were there that you've kind of like, I don't know what to do with that anymore. Like that doesn't ring true. That doesn't feel like God. That doesn't feel like love. That doesn't feel like where I'm at and what I'm being drawn to. And you've moved past them, or you've kind of distanced yourself from them, and that's often a really healthy practice. What does it look like to go back to some of those things and see what's still there and reclaim it for love, for the path of Christ, the path of love? And so today, as we start our journey, we're going to use kind of a meta term, which is faith, as we start this journey, because we are a faith community. What is faith, and how do we hold faith? And I've done a talk similar to this about 3 or 4 times over the course of our history. So if this sounds familiar, just consider it a refresher. I did adjust it from last time, so it's not just the same exact thing. It's kind of fun to go back to talks and be like, do I still believe that? Yeah, I do. Or, nah, I wouldn't quote that person anymore. And you kind of see your own progress as a form of reflection back on how you framed this a year or 2 years ago. But two kind of comparisons as I was thinking about how many of us were taught to hold faith. And I'm going to use a music teaching or music class or learning music as the analogy. When I grew up, I loved music, still do. I wanted to play music, still want to play better. And the idea was like, oh, you got to go to class, got to get a teacher. And music for me, in the initial stages of learning it, was like homework. It was having the right formula, like, hey, did I do the thing? Did I go back to my music teacher? And did I practice? And it was kind of fear-based for me. Not all music lessons or music classes like that, but for me it was like this structure, rigid thing, and it didn't work for me. But it's a way we often talk about music and how you learn music. Where I learned music more deeply was when I started playing with my friends. We were in a band. There was no structure besides hanging out and creating together. We didn't know where it was going, and that was fun. And we were creating something new. There was community to it. There was openness to it. There was fluidness to it. There was adventure to it. And I think many of us have been taught spirituality, faith, religion, Christianity in kind of a class kind of way. We go through catechism, or we get like, here's the 12 systematic theology books you have to learn. By the way, I have a master's of divinity. And so I've taken the class, I've gotten the degree, and I've arrived at faith. So should you need any answers, talk to the master. Just kidding. Obviously, that's absurd, right? The path of being a human in the world of humanness, of reality, is way bigger and more mysterious than you can systematize in a set of books. So many of us have been taught that that's how we're supposed to do faith. Like class, there's right or wrong answers. You're either in or you're out, this kind of rigid system. And I think there's utility to that at times, but I wish faith was held in our culture more as this free-flowing, it's a band creating together. You don't know where it's going, and it's beautiful, it's fun, it's an adventure, and you're creating something that didn't exist before that is very spiritual. If you've ever been in a music moment where you're creating together, it is spiritual. It's hard to describe outside of those terms. So another metaphor for how many of us have been taught religion, which I used last time, and I'm going to parallel to how Jesus talks about the life of faith, is that of a castle or a fortress. Anybody ever been to a castle or a fortress? How many count Napa as their castle? I guess it counts. Got to protect that wine. I think another image that many of us have maybe unconsciously held onto is that faith should be talked about in terms of like a fortress mentality. You build this thing up brick by brick. You go to the things, and then you have a very clear who's in and out. And there's this threat that's outside, like oh, those like slippery slope things out there. I got to protect my line here. And that's how religion or faith or walking with the divine is held. And a lot of American Christianity, a lot of global, I would say, religion is kind of fortress mentality. And Jesus actually talks about faith in a very different way, which we'll highlight from the Gospel of Matthew today. So we're going to read Matthew 13 and kind of start seeing a different image for how we can reclaim faith, going back to our teacher and seeing what he has to offer us 2,000 years later. So we're going to read Matthew 13, just a couple verses. At this point in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus was teaching along the Sea of Galilee. He teaches a bunch of parables, which are stories alive with meaning, first about a farmer, then about weeds, and then he teaches them this subject about seeds, this little teaching. If you'd like to follow along with quotes or anything on your phone, you can go there. So we'll read it, and we'll take a moment to let this passage breathe in the community, and we'll pass around a microphone if anybody has a response or something that's speaking to them, an impression, a feeling in this moment. Matthew 13, 31 through 32 reads like this. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. Matthew 13, 31 through 32. Take a moment to just listen to that passage. And we'd love to hear If there's an impression, a feeling, even a question from this text that you're like, it's standing out to you. And this is one of the ways we kind of decentralize this conversation as we're learning together. Yes, I have a master's of divinity, but by no means does God speak through me any more than anybody else in the room. So any feelings or things that come up for you, and you can just raise your hand and Greg will pass around the mic. And if there's something online too, by all means share it and I'll try to read it from my phone.
So there's no trees at my house, and we have been trying to decide what trees to plant. And so, to be honest, this makes me feel impatient because I've been, casing out the neighborhood trying to figure out like, oh, that's a beautiful tree, that's a beautiful tree. They're all like 300-year-old oaks and olives. Like those are the ones I'm drawn to, and I'm like, which one can I have now? And yeah, that's what it makes me think of today.
Thanks for sharing.
There we go. I just find it interesting, the idea of the kingdom of heaven. I think of as a place, right? A place that we make or what it might be. But then he relates it to a thing, which is this mustard seed. And so then it's sort of like, how is this place a thing? And then where is it? Like in the sense of, is it growing? Is it a shrub already? Where along this path of development does it exist?
That's good. Yeah, thank you.
Just adding to that too, I think in addition to this concept of place, there's time, right? Too, I think that's been illustrated here, that it's like, it starts as a seed, it grows into a tree or shrub, and then eventually becoming a tree. So it's like this passage of time and space. It's a beautiful image. And then I think the thing that I just noticed recently too, looking at it, it's the birds are making nests. So there's also this hope for the future because they're creating their homes for their future offspring and stuff, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that I'm thinking of as well is just the part about taking the seed and essentially cultivating it. So it's starting from a small place, and through effort, it goes from the seed to the shrub to the tree. So it's not only like time, but also that effort.
That's good. Time for one more if anybody else wants to share. Cool. Can we get some snaps for the comments in the room? Oh, one more?
Yeah, one more.
One more. Take back your snaps.
So this got awkward a little bit. But I was going to say that I love this passage because I'm a plant nerd, and I love plants. And I don't know if you've driven by a hillside and you see all the mustard plants growing together. When you see a mustard plant growing and it's by itself, it kind of doesn't stand out, or it seems like a weed. But when you look at a hillside covered in them, it's like powerful and it's magical and it's just really beautiful. And I think what's great about this is it reminds me about how the kingdom of heaven is something sometimes that's like right in front of you, but you don't see it unless you're looking for it, and if you're like admiring the beauty of it. And so yeah, I just kind of, I guess when I read this, I always think about like what's happening in front of me that I'm unable to see because of my own things, that I'm not able to witness and see what's in front of me and like admire it or appreciate it.
Yeah, it's worth some snaps. I'm glad we had that last one. That was really profound. Well, lots there. If something was speaking to you or something you heard is kind of clinging to your soul, hang on to that. That could be the Spirit moving in the community in some beautiful way. I love that there's so much to this one passage, even we just saw in this moment. Like, there's a whole discussion on the kingdom, which we're not going to get too far into today, but just a quick reference. It is, I like to paraphrase it as the reality of God. It's interesting that Jesus takes kingdom, and when I think of kingdom, I think of like a throne and a castle. And he takes that image and then makes it organic. The kingdom of heaven is like. So it's that kind of fortress mentality. It's like, it's not like this. It's something not fortressy. Jesus uses this idea of an organic way of viewing God's reality throughout his teachings. And he builds off this later in chapter 17, verse 20, when he says, "For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." So faith the size of a mustard seed. And I'm not going to solve all these kind of images that Jesus paints, but I want to draw you into kind of the organic idea behind it all. And so I want to talk about mustard seeds and the potential plant that he might be referring to. This is a picture of what we call, from Latin taxonomy, Salvadora persica. They don't know exactly what plant Jesus was referring to, but the scholars say it's probably one of two plants. One of them is known as black mustard, or the Salvadora persica. Both were large and are large annual plants that grow up and then kind of wither in seasons. They grow up to 9 feet tall. And they grow from one of the smallest seeds in the Near East. And Jesus uses this image numerous times, these words. According to rabbinical tradition, this plant would not have grown in people's gardens. It was considered a weed, like out in the wild. And this is consistent with Matthew's description of it growing in a field. It's a wild plant. It's out there, and it does what it does. And I think it's profound that Jesus is saying God's reality is like that weed that you probably don't pay attention to, that grows every year, gets big, takes over a whole hillside, provides perch and shade for other creatures. And nobody's controlling it. It's doing its own thing. It doesn't need to be a redwood tree to have an impact. It's wild and it's organic. There are cycles of birth and death and rebirth. Each plant grows in its own way, right? They're not curated to all look the same. It's connected to an ecosystem. Most plants outside of like curated gardens are interconnected with the other plants that they're around, or the soil or the animals. If you ever want like a really interesting, profound book that'll blow your mind, read The Hidden Life of Trees. It talks about tree consciousness and how trees talk to each other. It's like, and this is a forester who studied this his whole life. I like this image because it reminds me that as a plant does, it needs nutrients, it needs light, it needs nutrients from the ground. And this is a wild contrast to a fortress. So if we're doing the work of reclaiming our faith, what would it look like to reclaim our faith as more organic and wild and unpredictable? I was thinking about the weeds this morning. Like, these weeds still exist, and they're all derivative from like a seed from 1 billion years ago or something. How interesting is it, like the seeds that existed in Jesus' time passed on their DNA and their life all the way to now, and there are still these plants growing in Palestine. Would they, if they could think about it, would they know, or would they be blown away by the fact that they are still existing in some form, continuing on forever? A castle, on the other hand, needs clear boundaries, needs black and white answers, is kind of motivated by a threat mentality, whereas a mustard plant is open and again grows organically towards wherever life is found. That's another thing interesting about plants find their way, right? If there's more water over the generations of plants, they'll move in a direction. They know where life is. What if faith was like that? It could be this organic journey that we're being drawn towards life. Unfortunately, I think many of us have been taught a view of faith, that faith is a box of beliefs that you need to mark in-groups and out-groups. It's a set of structure that provides comfort and safety. Often it's a form of power. Often faith has been taught as a way to not think critically or with curiosity. Often it's been a way to get things from people like action or money. And often it's been motivated by like a fear or guilt mentality. Can anybody relate to that, like growing up in faith practices that were more fortress mentality? Have you ever seen, well, I'll say this. One of the bummers about the way faith is talked about nowadays is it's just boring. Have you been to like Bed Bath & Beyond and you see those like placards that say like, live, love, laugh? One of them often is faith. And I've seen it. We have one at our house. I have no idea where it came from because I would not have bought that. But we have like a brick that says faith on it. And it's one of those like, oh, this is a Hallmark, cheeky, like, give me warm and fuzzies mentality. Like, it's just feel good. And I think often faith has been offered to us as something boring. It's about the right set of beliefs and has a lot of maybe fear underneath it. And what I've experienced is that the journey of faith is not supposed to be boring. We're stepping into the unknown of our existence, creating a world together that has yet to be written. And the potential there is amazing. The risk is real. So like a boat that was never meant to be stuck in the marina, is designed to go sail the seas, I think many of us have been taught that our faith is this thing that we arrive to. We have our kind of security, our right beliefs, our right community, and we just stay there. When maybe God is inviting us to go out, to grow, to see where the life cycles take us, just like a weed in the fields and the hills. So a few thoughts on faith, some distilled thoughts that feel true to me at this moment. And if we do this talk in 2 years, who knows if I'll frame it the same way. But some thoughts on faith and ways we can reclaim faith from fortress mentality to something more aligned with the images of Jesus. First, I think faith is an ever-deepening and expanding of our souls towards love, not a static set of propositional ideas. It's trusting that God is somewhere, somehow, in all of this. And it's our job just to surrender to that love, to let go of our fears. And there are seasons. There are highs and lows. There are seasons of loneliness. There are seasons of lack of connection. Just like a weed, there are winters where it loses its leaves and it seems like life isn't there anymore. That's a part of the faith journey. If you find yourselves in God's current, you may end up creating things and going places you didn't expect. There's an expansion to the faith journey, not a retreat. Have you ever met people who are still growing in their faith, like decades and decades on? I've met a lot of people who have, like even towards the last stages of life, that still have this openness, this wonder, this curiosity. They don't have as much fear. They seem to just have some sort of deep trust that love will catch them somehow. I've also met people who go the other way and watch a lot of Fox News in their old age, or whatever, all the cable news. It's just fear-based, and so there's this retreat fortress mentality, and they kind of get closed off. I hope that I can move towards the more opened way, and I think faith is supposed to draw us there, towards openness. That God will be there. There's love behind it all. I don't need to build a castle. I can let go and let God's flow take us. Faith, the second thought here. I think I have these on the screen too. Second one, faith is a wild, unpredictable, lifelong journey, not a stage of life we arrive at once and for all. Again, I made the joke about I went to seminary. Did I arrive? Nope. I believe a lot differently than I did back then, and it's been good. Being drawn down the path of love, there's a lot of letting go. There's a lot of receiving new things, a lot of stepping into the mystery. And I think that change, that evolution of our being is a part of the faith journey. I've said before, I had a mentor who does a lot of couples partner counseling kind of work and talks about he and his partner, he's married to a woman. He said, my wife's been married to 5 different men, and all of them have been me, which is like, whoa, that's a good framework for the journey we're on. We have a lot of young people in the room. Like, who knows what faith, how it will form us over the next few years. For a lot of us look back on our journey, we could see different seasons. And I would say that's not to be feared, that's to be celebrated, to be embraced as a gift. We don't know where it's going, but faith is the trust that God is going with us, that love is walking with us. Third, faith is a vulnerable act of trust and surrender, and is one of the ways we heal from our fears. In its essence, all the mystics, all the traditions talk about faith as an act of surrender. Ultimately, we all have to surrender at some point in our life to the finality, to the finiteness of it. Faith is the act of surrendering and trusting that God is there, that God will catch us, even letting go of our fears. I think a lot of the division and pain in our world is because we have not healed from our fears, the pain, the trauma, and it's created more fear. So we build more fortresses of in and out groups. And I think faith is one of the ways we can heal as people and as communities. There's a lot of work there, but if you look to any of the healing practices, you see that surrender is a part of it somewhere. Faith in something is a part of it. Those struggling with addiction need to let go. The actual word in 12 steps is surrender. Patients need to trust their doctors or their healers, that someone outside of themselves has their best interest and will help them. I think our souls ultimately need to surrender to what we'd call God. It's terrifying to let go of control and let someone or something else hold you, but it's been my experience that's one of the ways we heal from our fears. It's through faith. Barbara Brown Taylor, in her book about finding God outside of a rigid church, quotes from that book, she says this: "I had arrived at an understanding of faith that had far more to do with trust than certainty. I trusted God to be God even if I could not say who God was for sure. I trusted God to sustain the world, although I could not say for sure how that happened. I trusted God to hold me and those I loved in life and in death. I wanted to recover the kind of faith that has nothing to do with being sure what I believe and everything to do with trusting God to catch me, though I am not sure of anything." It's a beautiful picture of faith. And maybe a question for us is, has God caught you? Where have you sensed God when you let go? Where have you sensed God hold you and catch you? I think the claim of the Christian tradition is that God will hold us even through death when we let go to that reality, that we'll be held in love mysteriously by the God who created all. A couple quick thoughts, just kind of offering my thoughts in the moment about faith and where I'm at in my faith journey, and thinking about people in this community. I know there's people of all different backgrounds, and many who have been hurt by the misuse of faith, and many of us still trying to figure it out. I thought it'd be appropriate to just share how I define my faith personally in this moment. I consider myself a person of faith. I have seen the power of faith to do harm, the energy of faith to be used by unhealed people for power in fear, to hurt people, to control people, to exploit people. But I've also seen the power of faith to heal, to transform, and inspire people to create a better world. My personal faith, and we're all on this journey individually, is non-exclusive, but I'm kind of rooted in the ways of Jesus. I'm very curious about the various ways to hold faith, because it's all a mystery that don't come from my tradition. Personally, in my faith journey, I've experienced things that I cannot explain outside of the energy, the language of faith, and the symbols around faith. I believe in hope and love, and I believe that the faith invitation to reclaim it is to draw us into something inside our souls that is more real than the world we often see. And so my definition of faith at the moment is, borrowing from Julian of Norwich, that faith is a releasing, a letting go, to what seems like the unfair reality that all things will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well. How would you describe where you are in your faith journey at this moment? Fourth, I've got two more. Fourth, faith is a force which brings heaven to earth. Faith is about imagining and sensing where love can lead us, and not settling for the status quo, but continuing the journey. Not that we have to do it, but trusting that there is a God pushing us towards something good. I find that faith is one of those things that we need if we want to change the world. Otherwise, we've done so many action moments. I've been a part of so many different initiatives, and it seems sometimes like it doesn't go anywhere. And I can just get defeated and sad. But I think faith invites us to a different way, to see the bigger picture, which is bigger than we can possibly imagine. John Lewis, the congressperson and civil rights activist, talks about how faith is at the center of the civil rights movement. Just a quote from him. The civil rights movement was based on faith. Many of us who were participants in this movement saw our involvement as an extension of our faith. We saw ourselves doing the work of the Almighty. Segregation and racial discrimination were not in keeping with our faith, so we had to do something. From filmmakers to parents to doctors to students to Uber drivers, we have the invitation to create a different world, to create together music and beauty and goodness and healing. And it is an act of faith. And I think the way we sustain that action over the long haul is by wedding ourselves to a story that's bigger than us. That America and us changing America for good, we want to do that. But even if America doesn't do it, there's still more ahead. The last point is faith is a communal practice. I remember I had a mentor who was a pastor. We're getting ready to plant a church. I was working at a church plant, and this person had had a lot of tragedy recently in their life, but was still in charge of holding some sort of spiritual space for a community. And I was processing that with him, and I was like, what's your faith like? And he's like, I have no faith. I have no faith right now. All I have is the faith of my friends, my community. And this image has stuck with me so deeply and profoundly, because I think there's many times where it doesn't feel like I don't have any faith. I don't even have a mustard seed. I think that's where we lean on the faith of others in community, that we were not created to be isolated. But even the mustard seed exists, and the plants that come from it, in an ecosystem that has to do with so much more than it can imagine or be aware of. When we do faith, I think it's a communal act. Maybe there's somebody in your life right now that you know is going through something. What does it look like to have faith for them? To just hold them in your soul, knowing that what they're going through is not the final word. It's a part of the journey, and sometimes we have to go through that to get to the other side. But what does it look like to have faith for others in our communities? Maybe there are life circumstances that have sucked the faith out of you. Family drama or unrealized dreams or loneliness, careers not being what you want, loss, health issues. You're not alone in that. And the invitation of faith is that we can hold each other together. So some thoughts on faith, a couple closing questions. If you were to take an assessment, and this is just a personal kind of looking inward question, and there's no judgment, there's no right answer, because that's what we're saying faith is not. It's not like there's no arriving, there's no right answer. We're on a journey. God is growing something in us, and there are seasons to it. But if you were to look inward, how would you assess that faith light inside of you? Does it feel alive? Does it feel dwindling? Don't try to fix it. Just notice it and see what's there. How does your faith feel? Does it feel alive? Second question is, what areas of our world can you believe in for positive change? Can you look to through the lens of faith? Even right now, we talk about the different conflicts in the world. What does it look like to look at these conflicts, genocides, violence, and not get defeated, but to have faith somewhere, somehow in that? What would it look like to look through these things? And then is there a way for us to take that faith and put it into action somehow? Giving of time or energy or prayers or money. And lastly, is there somebody in your life you can have faith for? And I don't mean like evangelize to them or go tell them, just in your own soul. Believe in love for them. I'm going to offer a prayer and close with a couple songs. Before I pray really quick, as we enter into the last couple moments of reflection, there's a table in the back. We're still doing the art project for our 10-year. If you'd like to go create in this time, there's a basket there that is a community care basket, and if you'd like to give some